Welcome back into the GSMC Sports Podcast for our final segment of the day, where we are going to just be going through some names in the 2024 draft class that could end up playing for Contenders this upcoming season and potentially carve out a role this season and next year. So starting off here, you have the two big men of Zach Edey and Donovan Kingan, last year's national championship matchup. I know that a lot of people are entirely out on Zach Edey. I'm definitely not in on him necessarily. He is probably one of the most polarizing prospects in this year's draft, and I'm not sure necessarily, I wouldn't guarantee that he is ever going to be a starting caliber center, but I do think that there are a number of teams that could absolutely benefit from having just an extra big option off of the bench to just kind of cause havoc for 10, 15 minutes a game. We saw last year how infuriated everybody in college basketball was when Edey would cause their favorite players to foul out just, minutes into the game. And obviously, that's at a college level. Edey can't just rely on his size at the next level to necessarily be able to have that same type of an impact, but I do still think he's somebody that you can throw into this conversation as a player that can go out on the court, provide you a different look, and again, just sort of eat up some minutes. If you're a team in the East as well, or I would say probably the East when you want to look at a Joel Embiid, a Giannis, these players that obviously just use their brute force to get to the rim on a regular basis. And Edey, I don't think has the defensive discipline to lock down either one of them. I mean, nobody can in the first place, but I don't necessarily buy into Edey on that level, but I do think that he is just somebody, a body you can put in the paint to be a disruptor. And Kingan obviously has the, I would say, higher ceiling in terms of, I think his game translates better. The fact that he can actually play in the pick and roll, and who knows, maybe Edey will be able to. He was never really asked to do so all too much effectively at the college level, and that I think Kingan is just a little bit more athletic. The fact that he has, a little bit more lateral quickness and such. I expect Kingan to be a good player. I'm not fully there with Edey, but he is also somebody that, maybe late lottery, maybe, mid first round, you could end up getting and seeing him playing some real minutes next year. I did consider throwing Stephon Castle as one of these, lottery picks that could potentially do so as well. But I would prefer to see Castle actually on a younger team and see if there is anything to that. Can he be a more on-the-ball guy? Can he improve his shooting consistently? But if Castle were to be drafted by a competitive team, I mean, he's going to have the motor, the defensive capabilities to get minutes as well. I would just probably prefer to see him on a younger roster and sort of figure out more what his game is. But some late first round picks that I could see having a difference is Tristan Silva, a forward for Colorado this past year. And this is just a player who he played a little bit bigger at the college level, where he was kind of seen as more of a 4-5 type player that was able to stretch out the floor. Now, I don't know if he's going to be, a big man necessarily at the NBA level. I find that a little bit hard to believe, but at the same time, I do think that he can give you spacing from a little bit of a bigger player and could have a valuable impact on a team that just sort of throws him out in, I don't know, you can almost say a Maxi Kleber type role where, again, he's just going to space out the floor. He's going to have a little bit of versatility for you, and again, I think that he's just shooting always is going to translate in the NBA. So I definitely buy into De Silva for those reasons. Again, at least as a rotational player. But some other names out there as well. Baylor Shyan, he was a senior at Creighton this past year, another player that is on the bigger side, that just has a shot that you can trust. He's also been in college basketball for a number of years, so the experience is something. And, especially this past year where Creighton ends up making the run to the Sweet 16, I think that, he's seen some big moments. He's played a lot of big minutes in some of those games as well. So I think that he's somebody that could very easily find himself into the rotation of even, a Boston Celtics down the road here. But we will see on that. Ryan Dunn of Virginia is, in my opinion, the best defensive player in this draft class, and I could totally see him in like a New Orleans or something, just continuing to have all of these different wings that just fly out and put you in jail defensively. I totally see that from Dunn being able to translate to the next level. Now, offense is obviously the big concern with him, which is why he is maybe one of my most questionable players on this list. But I think that the framework is absolutely there for him. Again, you want to see a more developed offensive game, but I think that he is going to very easily be able to hold his own on the defensive end, and not just hold his own, but potentially be special. And they already have a number of guys that are sort of defensive specialists in New Orleans, so maybe they don't go that route, but you look at what they've done in the draft these past years with Dyson Daniels, Herb Jones, Trey Murphy III. It is interesting to see whether or not Ryan Dunn. Also, Trey Murphy, former Virginia Cavalier, so I'll put that out there as well. But my last late first rounder here is Yves Missi. Now, he's also a little bit more raw that I'm not sure if we would see heavy minutes from necessarily, but I am just a believer in him that he can go out and be a high-intensity rim runner, almost a little bit of Robert Williams when he was at his peak in 2022, when he was fully healthy. I think there's a lot of elements to his game that still need to be developed, and I don't know if necessarily that is going to fully come into fruition if he does get thrown into a contending situation from day one. But I think that he has all of the physical tools to be able to carve out a role for himself in the NBA. The fact that he is such a high-energy player, I think he has that pop, the dynamicism, the explosion, all of, those types of things that can have him be a two-way beast that's, rim running on offense and is causing havoc in the paint defensively. So he intrigues me. Some second rounders I have here that I'll sort of quickly run through as well. Kyle Filipowski, the sophomore from Duke, 7-footer who is a very heads-up player, has a good post presence. Again, not necessarily somebody that I think you're ever going to run an offense through, but can hold somewhat of a similar role, probably at a lower level. But, along the same lines of Kingan and Edey, I don't know if any of the three of those big men are ever going to have a three-point shot. Filipowski could possibly find it at some point. I know we've all seen the pre-draft process videos of, various guys extending their range a little bit. I don't know how much stock you can put into that at all, but Filipowski would be an interesting one to me. Harrison Ingram of UNC, the junior forward. He was their best offensive player this past year for UNC, at least in terms of players I would say that can translate scoring-wise to the NBA. Now, he didn't necessarily take over the expectations I was hoping for him, that he could be, a legitimate night-to-night number one option, but still someone I think he has all the size tools. He has a shooting stroke that should be able to go down at the next level. He's a passable defender, just somebody who could definitely get minutes on a bigger stage. And speaking of big stages, Cam Spencer only seemed to improve his game the further the Huskies went into the playoffs, and somebody who probably wasn't on anybody's draft boards really until the postseason run for them. But I just look at the patience that he plays with in the offensive game, and obviously, the catch and shoot shooting from three is already a massive pro for him, but there is also some level of creation that, no, he doesn't necessarily have the most athletic build, the tightest handle, or anything to ever be a consistent isolation shooter. But in terms of being the guy who gets kicked out to off of a drive and kick, I think he can very, very successfully, attack closeouts or just be able to knock down the big shots in the moment. So I think that Cam Spencer, I'm really interested in him because he was a ton of fun to watch in college. And, almost selfishly, I hope that he does have a role for himself in the NBA. And then another little personal favorite for me is Jaylen Bridges of Baylor. He was a junior, I believe, this past year, and I watched a lot of Baylor games this year because I was interested in Yves Missi, as I just mentioned, and Jacoby Walter, the freshman who could very well be a lottery pick this year. But Jaylen Bridges just continued to stick out to me as a very high-level glue guy and somebody who does all of the right things. He hits the shots off the catch. He is able to hold his own in one-on-one basketball. And, he has the size as well. I just think that he is going to, coming from a situation in Baylor where, again, I just loved watching the team. I thought they were one of the hardest working teams in college basketball last year. I just think that I could see a role for him being able to apply some of that intensity that they played with on a regular basis under Scott Drew at Baylor and put it towards a winning effort in the NBA. But let me know if there are any other sort of sleeper prospects that you guys are interested in that we can see as it plays out. The NBA draft is tonight, at least the first round, so will be really interesting to see all of that. But that is all the time we have for today. Thank you very much for tuning into the GSMC Sports Podcast. Thank you to the GSMC Sports Network for allowing us to host this show. Remember to like, follow, subscribe wherever you keep up with us. Be sure to check us out on social media as well for more exclusive short content. I know we started a little bit later today, but we are live 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern every single weekday, so we will be back tomorrow with some reactions to the draft, so definitely be sure to tune in then. As for now, I am TJ Mabardi, and we will see you tomorrow. Take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet. Damn, ain't that great. I don't wanna go.